Hey you guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. Today I'm going to be talking about the new moon we have coming up here on Monday, September 2nd. This new moon peaks at 6:55 p.m. Pacific time and takes place in the sign of Virgo, 11 degrees Virgo. I really like this because what this means is we have the sun and the moon both at 11 degrees Virgo. So when we pull up the chart, you'll see it's 11:11. A lot of people know how magic that combination is. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm going to break down how to work with this energy. As many of you know, at a new moon is always a time to manifest new beginnings and growth. That's related to the sign that the new moon takes place in, okay? And this sign of Virgo is a very, very important time to be working with this energy right now is absolutely crucial. This sign has so much to do A, with our physical health, and B, being of service. I think right now in the world, being of service in some way, shape, or form, whether or not you're getting financial compensation for it, is so massively important, okay? So I'm going to break down the sign of Virgo for you in detail. Of course, I'm going to pull up the chart and I will be showing you some other very prominent astrological forces that we're receiving at the time of this new moon. In fact, there's some really important things coming up just a few days after this new moon. So I also want to talk about those. I will also be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Virgo, because these parts of our body become more sensitive anytime anything up in the sky transits through the sign of Virgo. Depending on what the celestial body is that's going through the sign of Virgo will have a different effect. For this, we've got the sun and moon, okay? Virgo rules some extremely important parts of the body. I'll just put this out there right now. The sign of Virgo actually rules the liver and the intestines, okay? We do not function optimally at all if our liver or our intestines are screwed up, okay? So I will be mentioning some potential herbal remedies to help support these parts of our body during this kind of transit. And of course, I will be mentioning some gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Virgo. Now, if you're somewhat familiar with your natal chart, or if you've had a reading with me, you can go back and review the video recording to see which area of your own life this specifically manifests for you. Okay, I like working with the whole sign house system when it comes to lunar transits. So that said, you would be able to see, is this coming through your house of career? This is the sign of Virgo for me. I have no planets, not even asteroids in the sign of Virgo, but the sign of Virgo comes through my house of career. Okay, so, and it's so funny because the sign of Virgo is very much about paying attention to detail and being very organized. Well, my sun is in the opposite sign of Virgo, in Pisces. By nature, I am not an organized person and I'm not good at paying attention to detail. But when it comes to my career, that is the area of my life. I mean, a lot of people think that I have Virgo energy in my natal chart. I mean, of course we all do, but they think I've got planets in the sign of Virgo. Actually, I had one person guess if my Mercury was in Virgo, and I was like, I'll take that as a compliment because it's, this could be coming through your house of home, keeping your house organized and clean and pure and that sort of thing. Could be coming through your house of relationships, could be coming through your house of finances. Your Virgo rising is coming through your house of self. And also, if you're using a different house system, Placidus or equal sign or Regiomontanus, then you're going to want to see where 11 degrees Virgo, to be very specific, 11 degrees and 4 minutes come through your natal chart. When it comes to these lunar transits, I really like working with the whole sign house system. Nothing against other house systems. I actually use them for other systems of astrology. Okay, so there's that. If that's too much for you, please feel no need for concern because this is something we learn in baby steps. Okay, if you're not familiar with your natal chart, you've never seen a natal chart before, then don't worry about it. Just focus on the sign of Virgo in and of itself. What I always do is I pull out my journal. Been doing this since 2016, pulling out my journal, writing down what I want to manifest, what kind of growth I want to experience that's related to that zodiac sign. And then I apply it to the area of my life that it comes through for my own natal chart. And then I like to take a few gemstones and put them on top of my journal. Okay, you're always going to find a full extensive list of stones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through in the description below here on YouTube. And also, if you see my videos on Instagram, you can always look in the comment section for stones that resonate well. But again, on top of that, don't feel any need for concern if you don't have any of these gemstones. Just work with what you've got. You don't have any gemstones, maybe manifest new gemstones into your life. Okay, so there's that. Let's get into this. The sign of Virgo, absolutely lovely energy. I've got a lot of Virgo friends and I just adore you guys. I honestly, it's almost like I'm fascinated with this energy because I think I wish I had more Virgo energy in my natal chart. This is what we call the mutable earth sign. When I say mutable, I'm talking about adaptability. When we think about the element of earth, or just think about the elements of Western astrology, earth, air, water, and fire. When you think about those elements, which one do you think is the most stable? Of course, it's earth, okay? All the earth signs, Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo tend to be, when I say stable, I'm talking about showing up to work on time, taking care of their responsibilities. Okay, but the sign of Virgo out of all those, stable earth signs is the most adaptable. Okay, all the mutable signs, meaning like being able to mutate, they come right before we shift into a new season. Okay, Virgo is the last zodiac sign of summertime, so I'm holding on so tight to this Virgoan energy. But then when we leave the sign of Virgo, the sun moves into the sign of Libra, and that is fall or autumn. Okay. So with that said, this energy can mutate. Now, the sign of Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Okay. And I'm going to try not to go on too big of a Mercury tangent here, but Mercury is just absolutely fascinating to me. Mercury has a huge influence on our entire nervous system. In fact, the sign of Virgo rules our sympathetic nervous system, which is basically like flight or fight. Okay. But this mercurial energy, what it does is how we receive our information. Okay. No matter what we're doing, we're always receiving information into our consciousness. And that information is really kind of brought in through Mercury. And what Mercury's got to do is he's got to keep that information organized. Okay. The Mercury I always describe it this way. It just cracks me up because it's like I actually picture it literally. But Mercury takes that information in and puts a label on a file and files it somewhere into our consciousness. When we want to go and express or communicate that information, Mercury goes in, he's got to find that file and bring it back out for us to communicate. So with that said, Mercury actually rules the sign of Virgo and the sign of Gemini. The sign of Virgo is very much about being organized. It's a very analytical energy, pays very close attention to detail. That's Mercury keeping the files organized. But Gemini, again, also ruled by Mercury, is the sign of communication. That's about bringing the information back out. Okay, so Mercury is absolutely fascinating. I love all the archetypes of Mercury. We're talking about Odin. We're talking about Hermes Trismegistus. We're talking about Thoth. Okay, all these are messengers of the gods, all those mercurial archetypes. Okay, so moving on, the sign of Virgo is represented by the Virgin. Okay, just doesn't really have anything to do with being a virgin. It's more about the purity that comes with that. Again, this sign of Virgo is very strongly associated with our physical health and keeping a lot of Virgos, certainly not all of them, but Virgo suns and Virgo risings, a lot of them will be very, very finicky about what they're putting into their body. Certainly not all of them. I know plenty of Virgos who I wish they did take better care of their physical health, but a lot of Virgos just by nature, they want to keep their bodies wholesome and pure and clean. Okay. Not only that, but that kind of a nervousness that can come through with the sign of Virgo. That also, when you think about a nervous sort of virgin energy, okay, a lot of people with Venus in Virgo. So Venus is the influencer of romance, okay, amongst many other things, but the influencer of romance. So when we've got the influencer of romance in our natal chart coming through the sign of Virgo, a lot of times these people will be very, very, I'm just going to use the word picky, which is probably a good thing, about who they're sharing their romantic, physical energy with, because they want things to be pure and clean. Okay, now the sign of Virgo, the motto is I analyze. Again, it's a very analytical energy that it's like this sign that can be really good at, oh boy, like being an assistant or that sort of thing, somebody who's got to do all the little details of things. Okay. It's very, and that also has a lot to do with the nervous system, being very analytical. Sign of Virgo actually has a lot to do with harvest season. Okay. It's really a time of year. Well, at least for most of us in the world, this is really a time of year where people are out there harvesting their fruits. I'm harvesting, going out and looking at the tomato and analyzing it. Is this ready? Should I pick this today? Should I wait another day? I want it to be perfect. This is really like the sign of perfectionism. Now, going back to this really being like the sign of being of service, when we think about that, a lot of these people will work some sort of a service position, whether it's a mechanic or I actually just gave a reading to a lady the other day who had a bunch of Virgo energy, and she was a flight attendant. Then being a waitress, whatever it is, somehow being of service. But it doesn't have to be like something that you're doing professionally. When I'm talking about being of service, I'm talking about in any way, shape, or form. Asking your neighbor if they need any help with anything. You'll take their garbage cans up the driveway for them or something along those lines. That we are living in a time where that is seriously important for so many different reasons. So when I'm saying, how do you want to grow in these ways? That is one thing I will be paying very close attention to in my manifestation journal, is how to be more of service with clarity and paying attention to those details. Also, physical health. Maybe you want to start taking better care of your physical health. This is a time to manifest that. Okay, I think I covered everything. Virgo is the mutable earth sign, adaptable, stable, being able to take care of the responsibilities. It's ruled by Mercury. The motto is I analyze, and it is represented by the Virgin, the sign of purity and perfection. Okay, so let's pull up the chart and get into some of this stuff. Here we go. If you are new here, I work with geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, what we are looking at here is basically a snapshot of what we call the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. Okay, basically we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. These things are the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies. Like here's the sun, here's the moon. When we go in the wheel just a little ways, these things are the symbols for the zodiac signs. So all these things will be beaming through onto Earth at the time of this new moon. Okay, so again, this is Monday, September 22nd at 6:55 p.m. Pacific time. So you might want to see, if you live in a different time zone, see what time this is actually coming through for you. I always try to write in my journal. Sometimes I'll do it the night before. It depends on what time. This is at 6:55 p.m. for my time zone. So I will probably write in my journal that morning. I try to do it, with at least a few hours beforehand. But if you're seeing this video after that, don't worry about it. Still write in your journal. Better late than never, always. Okay, now, so here we have the sun, here we have the moon, both at 11 degrees Virgo and 4 minutes. Okay, and you might notice if you take the time to look this up in your location, you will probably, it's if you live in a different time zone, you might find the sun and the moon in a different part of the circle here. The whole entire zodiac is going to turn depending on your location. But for everybody, it is at 11 degrees Virgo, 4 minutes. This puts us in something called the second decan, the very beginning of the second decan of this Virgoan energy, which actually gives it a little twist of Capricorn energy as well, which gives it a little more ambition. Okay, now the strongest aspect that comes off of this new moon, this right here is Saturn. Okay, we see these red lines going across here. Let's see, it'll probably be about 8 hours after this new moon that the moon will make an exact opposition. So here we have Saturn at 16 degrees Pisces. These guys are at 11 degrees Virgo. Virgo and Pisces are opposite. So the moon moves much faster than the sun, and which the moon will make an opposition with Saturn every single month. So that's not that big of a deal. But about 5 days after this new moon, the sun will be making an opposition with Saturn, which that only happens once a year. And it's a little bit of a heavy transit. But how we can work with this is when we think about Saturn's influence, Saturn, his influence is to bring in discipline and take care of our responsibilities. Okay. And in the sign of Pisces, Saturn's going through the sign of Pisces all the way till the beginning of 2026. I think it's the end of February 2026. But currently in retrograde. Okay, so Saturn, it's almost like, especially if this is hitting something in your chart, if you've got something near 16 degrees Pisces, also if you've got something near 16 degrees Sagittarius or 16 degrees Gemini or 16 degrees Virgo, ooh, that's a big one. Or maybe even trining this near 16 degrees Scorpio or Cancer, this is a really important time for you, especially, so it would be around, I would say September 8th, 9th, and 10th, probably 8th and 9th are most prominent, when the sun's making that exact opposition with Saturn. While Saturn's in retrograde, it's, if you could picture it this way, the sun's beaming his rays right at the influencer of discipline and responsibilities, okay? While that influencer of discipline and responsibilities is in retrograde. This could be a really good time to be reevaluating how you're taking care of your responsibilities. And this is in the sign of Pisces, so this could have something to do with your spiritual responsibilities. Could also have a little bit to do with the waters. I'm loving seeing people study water. Okay, and if you're, I'm fairly active on Instagram. In fact, I post some things on Instagram that I don't post on YouTube, and I post some things on YouTube that I don't post on Instagram. But on Instagram, I've somehow been able to find a lot of people who I follow who are studying water, studying the molecules of water, studying, ozone water, all kinds of really cool things. And that's so neat to see while Saturn is going through the sign of Pisces. Okay, so there's that. That could have a lot to do with our responsibilities, especially being responsible about being of service, and especially about being responsible of taking care of our physical health, spiritual responsibilities, all of these things. Okay, so there's that. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is Mercury, which is kind of like the lord of this new moon, because again, Mercury rules the sign of Virgo. So Mercury's going through the sign of Leo. Mercury just went stationary. Let's see, today's the 29th. I think it was yesterday. Mercury went stationary. He was in retrograde, but no longer in retrograde. Moving forward, has got about, I think Mercury moves into the sign of Virgo on the 9th of September. So let's talk about this. So Mercury, we understand what Mercury does. Information and communication, the messenger of the gods. Well, here's the sign of Leo. Leo's like the sign of royalty and leadership, and a sign that dramatic energy, okay? And so think about that dramatically, okay? Mercury is working in kind of a dramatic way going through the sign of Leo. Now, it's also important, very important to understand that we, of course, all experience this so incredibly uniquely from each other. Do you have anything in your natal chart near 23 degrees Leo, or maybe trining that near 23 degrees Sagittarius or Aries? There's so many things that can be applied to our own natal chart. But again, I'm trying to focus on what is going on with the collective here. Now, what's neat about this is that, okay, first of all, let's start here. So the sign of Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sign of Virgo is ruled by Mercury. They're in each other's houses. They're in each other's, I shouldn't say houses, it could get confusing for people. They're in each other's castles. The sun is in Mercury's castle, and Mercury is in the sun's castle. So there's some connections going on here, even though there's no real true aspects going on between these guys. They're still having somewhat of a conversation. And it could, when you take the combination of that Leo dramatic leadership and the combination of this sign of being of service and purity and harvesting, okay, it's a really nice combination. But again, I believe it's September 9th. In fact, I'd probably even wait till September 10th or 11th. What Mercury is going to do is move into his own sign of Virgo, okay? Mercury will be in his own home, in his own castle, functioning the way Mercury likes to, paying very close attention to the details of things. Now, this could be a really good time for the business meeting, for, if you're authoring something, or, even saying I know a lot of people are trying to write a book. This would be a really good time to, work on your book when Mercury enters into the Virgo. Again, I would probably wait till the 10th or 11th. Long story short, Mercury is going to make an inconjunct or quincunx to Pluto right when he moves into Virgo. So maybe a day after that, 10th or 11th, is when it could be all those mercurial energies, the communication, the organization skills within the mental function, that sort of thing, could be a really, really good time for that. Okay, now let's move on to Mars. So here's Mars just finishing up in the sign of Gemini. So 2 days after this new moon on September 4th, Mars moves into the sign of Cancer. While he's finishing up in Gemini, okay, Gemini again is the sign of communication, and Mars is what revs things up. Okay, Mars is what makes us take action. Mars is the aggressor. Mars can influence things that are of a frustrating nature, but we need Mars because Mars is what makes us go take action to do what we got to do. And we think about this sign of communication. It's also the sign of duality. I notice a lot of people who are born with Mars and Gemini, they're excitable. Let's go over here. Let's go do that. Let's sociable. I want to go because they're revved up in this sign of communication. But while Mars is finishing, in fact, Mars is making a quincunx with Pluto too. That's going to go on for a few days. Okay, so I would be mindful with our communication, especially if it's something that's rolling from way back deep in the psyche. And I'm talking about days surrounding this transit. Again, Mars moves into the sign of Cancer on September 4th. While he's doing this, he's making this inconjunct over to Pluto. So I'm talking about the psyche. This would also be want to be very careful with yourself overall. Be careful about anything that could be poisonous or toxic or something like that. Okay, because both of these guys can be a little bit malefic. But going back to this, 2 days after this, when Mars moves into the sign of Cancer, so Cancer, this is going to be a very interesting transit. When I say malefics, really the two true malefics are Saturn and Mars. Okay, Saturn is, to sum this up, Saturn influences things that are like of a chronic nature, chronic disease. Saturn is cold and creates blockages. Don't mean to make Saturn sound bad because we absolutely need Saturn. Otherwise, nobody would take care of their responsibilities. Mars is another malefic because it's like Mars, again, frustration. Mars can influence things that are of a inflammation or some kind of a hot, frustrated nature. And I'm talking about physically and, metaphysically, what was being put out there. Okay, so when Mars moves into the sign of Cancer, we will have Saturn in Pisces and Mars in Cancer. These are both water signs, okay? Pisces is the mutable water sign, Cancer is the cardinal water sign. But regardless, so both the malefics will be in water signs. And Mars is going to be there for about, I think it's till November 2nd. Mars will be going through the sign of Cancer. Saturn's going through Pisces all the way until the beginning of 2026. But while Mars is going through Cancer and Saturn's going through Pisces, I think it's probably wise that we all be very, very mindful of the fluids and the waters in our bodies, and maybe even potentially waters that are around you. Be careful if you're going swimming out into the ocean or something like that. You might want to be really careful. But going back to the physical body, I'm talking about the lymphatic system, the sign of Cancer. Again, Mars moving into the sign of Cancer. Cancer has a huge influence on the stomach. Mars can irritate the stomach lining. And again, this is kind of like a double whammy since we've got both the malefics in these water signs. Okay. And not only that, there was something else I was going to mention about that. Oh, going back to the sign of Pisces really does have a massive influence on the lymphatic system. With that said, lymph exercises, I know from my understanding anyway, when it comes to exercises that are good for the lymphatic, I think it's probably a good idea that we do slow, gentle movements. There's also all sorts of things we can do to help encourage our lymph flow. I've actually had really good experiences from golden seal. Yeah, golden seal. Okay, so there's that. If you've got something in the sign of Pisces or the sign of Cancer, if you got both of those things, which hello, I do, they're the later degrees of Cancer and Pisces, but still, Cancer and Pisces, they've got the malefics going through there. So might want to just be mindful of that. But it could also be, hey, it's time to take care of these responsibilities. Or it could be like, hey, it's time to take action with this sort of thing. Because again, we're talking about Saturn and Mars. Okay, that's a little bit of a rant. Let's move on and talk about, let's go to Jupiter here. So Jupiter going through the sign of Gemini until June of 2026. So this is, again, the sign of communication. This is such an interesting transit because Jupiter wants to expand things. Jupiter wants to get philosophical. Jupiter wants the long distance travel. Jupiter wants things that are very much of a faith nature. Okay. When I say faith, it's like Jupiter is actually associated with things like religion, but I by no means am talking about any particular kind of religion. I'm talking about the faith that comes with religion. Okay, even faith in astrology. In fact, in Jyotish astrology, Jupiter is very strongly associated with the study of astrology. Okay, then we go to Gemini here. Gemini, again, ruled by Mercury, is much more like fact oriented, paying all attention to the little facts. It's almost like the sign of Gemini is the student and Jupiter is the professor. If you've got something in your chart, something prominent, say it's Mercury or your sun or even your moon, honestly, even if it is Jupiter, it's this energy that is saying, let's be the student, let's pay attention to all the little details of things and the facts, but let's also try to remember, take a step back and look at it from a philosophical perspective. Okay, so it's almost like we've got the professor in the student's castle with Jupiter going to the sign of Gemini. Okay, now let's move on to Venus up here. Venus, Venus. Okay, so Venus is going, I'm doing this, you'll understand why in a moment. So Venus is going through the sign of Libra, which we love because Venus rules the sign of Libra. She's in her own castle. She gets to function in a lovely way and focus on relationships and fairness and partnerships because that's what the sign of Libra is all about. However, look at that. She's right next to that south node. Venus. Okay. I didn't even realize that when I was looking at this chart earlier. So the south node is kind of like the drain point. Okay. It releases things. It lets things go. It's about detachment. So here we have the influencer Venus of love and harmony and beauty and art and creativeness, especially if it's lovely creativeness. There's a lot of creative things out there that are not necessarily in the category of lovely. I'm talking about things that are of a beautiful nature. That and again, relationships. So she's going through that zodiac sign that has to do with relationships and partnerships and fairness and justice. And right next to her is the drain point. Okay, now this transit is probably going to last 4 days, most prominently about 4 days. So I'm going to say September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and maybe even going into the 5th. Okay. If you've got something near, say between 4 and 8 degrees Libra, that's a very interesting transit for you, especially if it's your sun. I mean, if it's like something like Mercury, if you just think about what Mercury rules, our mental function, kind of a trippy transit because Venus is trying to soothe the nervous system if she's transiting over Mercury. But then there's the drain point right there that's taking things out. I guess the best way to describe this is if you've got something near, again, between say 4 and even 8 degrees Libra, there's potentially something that you're needing to let go of that has to do with all those Venusian or Libra subjects. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. It's just, I'm so, because Venus is so lovely going through the sign of Libra, but she's next to the drain point for a little while. Okay. So North node going through the sign of Aries. Now these nodes, North node's going through Aries all the way until January of 2025. Boy, I can't wait for those nodes to get out of these zodiac signs. The South node will be going through Libra till January of 2025. And I say that because this is affecting my chart kind of severely, but also it's like, again, the sign of Libra is a sign of justice and fairness and balance and harmony and relationships. And we got the drain point going through there. Aries is a sign of, I love Aries. I got a lot of Aries energy in my natal chart, but it's this ferocious sign. It's the cardinal fire sign. It's the aggressor. It's the warrior of the zodiac. And the North node is the pump that brings celestial energy in. A lot of people keep asking me if I think we're going to have a war. I mean, honestly, it seems like there's always some kind of a war going on, right? Always. Or if there's going to be like World War III that breaks out or something like that. I don't really foresee that, but what I do see is a lot of aggression coming through. I do see, especially if you've got something near 6 degrees in your natal, 6 degrees Aries in your natal chart, be mindful of anything that's of a frustrating nature. I think that these nodes are going through there during the election time, and I do feel like no matter what the outcome is with this election, there's going to be a large group of people that are going to be furious. Okay. There's either that I think that, should I even say this? I think I'm going to say it. I think that if one particular person wins, there's going to be furious, enraged people coming through with that Aries energy. If another person wins, I think a lot of people are just going to just completely give up on the government. And that's the way I think it's going to go. I do think I know who's going to win, and I will put another video about that coming here soon. Okay, now, when I say win, the whole thing is rigged in my opinion. But moving on, let's talk about Uranus here going through the sign of Taurus. So, and making a trine to Pluto. I forgot about that. Okay, so Uranus going through the sign of Taurus, Uranus influences things of a very revolutionary nature. Uranus is very electrical. Well, really what Uranus does is he interrupts or disrupts things that are of an electrical nature, okay? And the sign of Taurus is the most grounded, stable sign of the zodiac. It's the fixed earth sign. Uranus is debilitated here, going through here for approximately another year and a half. There's a lot of very revolutionary, strange things that are going on. The sign of Taurus is very strongly associated with money and finances. A lot of strange things going on there. And currently making this trine over here to Pluto. And in fact, they're going to make a very strong trine next year. But, okay, Pluto, like Uranus is influencing abrupt revolutionary changes. Pluto is more like slow, sort of painful transformational processes going through the 29 degrees Capricorn. Okay, it's a time of great change. That's the simplest way I can describe this. And really, this is going on. These guys are going to be in contact with each other for, think about another close to 2 years, about a year and a half. Pluto, the ruler of our psyche and powerful ruler of the underworld, Pluto is. Okay, and Uranus is a god of the sky, and they are having quite a lovely conversation, but I imagine it's quite brutal at the same time, just recognizing the influence of these celestial bodies. And again, going through the sign of Capricorn, if you got something near 29 degrees Capricorn, you've been going through a lot. That is no doubt. Okay, now over here, we've got Neptune also at 29 degrees. So Neptune is the influencer. I talked about Pisces being the sign of spirituality. Well, Neptune is what makes Pisces like that. Neptune going through Pisces is another one that's basically for about another year, a little over a year. And I don't want to go into detail because what's going to happen with some of these slower moving celestial bodies is they're actually going to move into the next sign over, but then they're going to retrograde back and then they're going to move forward. So, but basically about another year and a half with Neptune going through Pisces. Lovely influence for spirituality, lovely influence for people who are tapping into their intuition, people who are meditating and so on and so forth. But it's also especially at 29 degrees. I want to talk about this. Neptune and Pluto, both at 29 degrees. That's the anaretic degree. Okay. I've heard it be referred to as the danger zone. I don't want to scare anybody and make them think danger is coming. I mean, honestly, danger is kind of like always coming, right? But in some way, shape, or form, whether it be minuscule or big time. I'm not talking about necessarily something dangerous going on in the world. But what I am talking about is both of these guys, Pluto and Neptune, are kind of more of like Neptune's ethereal, Neptune's mystical, spiritual, breaks down our psychic boundaries. And then there's Pluto, who has a massive influence on our spiritual willpower and our psyche. Okay, so both of these guys are at 29 degrees. That's the very last degree of any zodiac sign. And it's considered, it's like, how did I hear Judith describe it? It's like they're slippery, or it's like they're right at the end. They want to move into the next sign. They're kind of, it's almost like a confusing transit, basically, especially because these guys are sextile with each other. This could be extremely powerful if you are on some sort of a spiritual journey and you're really trying to, take your practices to a really, to a very serious nature. I don't know if you've noticed, maybe it's just my position in the world, but it does seem like more and more and more and more and more people are tired of their corporate position. They're tired of their, their techie job, and they want something that it fulfills more of a spiritual purpose or nature, okay? A lot of that is going on because Pluto and Neptune are both, they're having this conversation, especially Neptune going through Pisces. Okay, that is enough rambling there. Okay, did we cover them all? No, I think we've got to talk about Chiron here. So Chiron, be wounded healer, in retrograde, a lot of retrogrades. Saturn's in retrograde, Neptune's in retrograde, Pluto's in retrograde, Chiron's in retrograde, Uranus is in retrograde. So keep that in mind. Retrogrades, the basic way to describe retrogrades is a time to reevaluate. Things get a little goofy when things are in retrograde. Okay, things can definitely, you think things are going one way. I got this plan, especially if this hits something strong in your natal chart. Okay, if it's, say you've got something, okay, let's go to Uranus in retrograde at 27 degrees Taurus. Let's say you've got your sun or your Mercury or your moon or Jupiter or Mars, whatever it is, and you're 27 degrees Taurus. And now Uranus is backing up retrograde over that thing. Uranus, again, it's like a zappy kind of energy, an electrical kind of energy that we receive. And it's almost like trying to reevaluate what you want to do that is revolutionary, or you're, oh my gosh, all of a sudden my computer broke, something that's of a technological nature. I'm on this path and all of a sudden something sets me back because we got this retrograde energy going on. Okay, now going back to Chiron here. So the wounded healer, the wounded warrior, going through the sign of being a warrior. As I've mentioned so many times, this really is a very good time to be working on healing ourselves. A really good, especially, do you have anything in your natal chart in your 22 degrees Aries? If so, Chiron's like, hey, remember all those wounds from early childhood development? Let's tap into them and legitimately heal them. Okay, especially because Chiron's making this really nice trine over here to Mercury, the ruler of our mental function, and going through the sign of leadership. Okay, so there's a lot here to support your healing journey. Okay, so I think I covered everything I wanted to. Let's get into body parts. Okay, so as mentioned, the sign of Virgo rules a lot of parts of the body, but really the main parts are the liver, okay, and the intestines, and again, the sympathetic nervous system. So these are the things that also has a little influence on the gallbladder. There's a lot of things that kind of have influence on the gallbladder. So it's just a really good idea that we all take care of our gallbladders. I don't have a gallbladder anymore. I wish I knew the things that I know now before I had my gallbladder removed. I think I was 27 years old. Holy smokes, that's like 20 years ago I had my gallbladder removed. Woo. But I really try to help others, there's so much information out there how to take care of your gallbladder. Especially even if you have gallstones, how to get rid of them. I'm not a doctor and I'm not offering any kind of medical advice whatsoever or even opinion, but these are things that I have learned over the years from wonderful teachers. In fact, I'm going to mention a class that's coming up that I think some of you might be interested in. And so I've experimented with myself and loved ones and family members and that sort of thing to help them recover. Okay, so let's start with the liver. Let's start with the liver. So my favorite thing for caring for the liver, and again, there's a lot of things we could do to help care for our liver, but my favorite is milk thistle. So what I've got here, these are milk thistle seeds. Okay, now we've got a lot of milk thistle that grows here in somewhat of Northern California. I'm kind of like right smack in the middle of California. Like I'm not really Southern California or Northern, I'm kind of right smack in the middle. But I think milk thistle grows all over the place and different kinds of milk thistle. So I've been harvesting these, and I will say, if you have access to milk thistle for yourself, go harvest it yourself, but prepare yourself for a very, very tedious job because it takes forever. Milk thistle, what happens is those little things, a lot of people call them fairies, those white, little fluffy things that they float away and they they float the seed to another piece of the property so the seed can, plant somewhere else. And not only that, but the thistle itself is very, very prickly. You got to be really, really careful. I don't know how many times some cuss words came out of trying to harvest this milk. This is the first time I've ever harvested it myself. If you live in anywhere near Santa Cruz, California, there's an herb shop. It's called Go Ask Alice. That's where I always would get my herbs from. I know the owner and she keeps everything super high quality. But milk thistle, I will be grinding these up. You can see how little the seeds are. And by the way, they're different colors because there's different kinds of milk thistle that grows here. The ones that grow here, the dark ones right there, the dark ones, those are way bigger and way easier to harvest. But those little ones, man, OMG. Not only that, but my fingers stick to the little fairy things. But I will be grinding those up and making a tincture out of it. In fact, I know there's going to be some more that I can harvest here soon. That's why I haven't done anything with them yet. But milk thistle is great as a tea or tincture. Obviously, you don't have to harvest your own. You can buy online. There's milk thistle you can get from so many different, especially if you've got a good quality herb shop in your location. Milk thistle is something that's almost like, I feel like everybody should always have milk thistle on hand. I kind of like the tinctures. I mean, the tea is really, really good, especially with a little bit of honey, milk thistle tea. But I kind of like the tinctures just because it's easier to remember to do. I just leave the tinctures on my counter and then oh yeah, I should take some of this right now. Okay, so then the intestines. Okay, so actually for the intestines, I've got a couple bottles coming. As I've mentioned so many times, there's a product that's called RUG. RUG, it stands for Remove Unwanted Guests. That is my absolute favorite. It's got a combination of different kind of herbs to help support all different parts of the intestines and really the whole digestive tract, including the colon and everything. So RUG is my favorite, but also just, if you're looking for one herb to help support the intestines, I like yellow dock. I don't have any right now. So otherwise I would show you that, but I don't have any right now. Okay. Now the nervous system, there's again, because it's the nervous earth sign, the sign of Virgo is. And so some people who have got a lot of Virgo energy in their natal chart, they will deal with nervousness. And my favorite thing for that is hops, which this tincture, you can barely see where it says hops right there. You can see how much I have left. I love taking hops. I don't have an overactive nervous system at all, but hops is so good for so many things, especially right before I go to sleep. I like taking hops. Another one is oat straw. Tincture can be really good for the nervous system. And also, I didn't get the lemon balm. Lemon balm can also be good for the nervous system, just kind of helping to relax the nervous system overall. Those are my favorite things to work with. Now, as far as gemstones go, the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Virgo is actually a sapphire, which I had a sapphire. It wasn't an expensive sapphire, it was an opaque sapphire, but I loved it and I don't know where it went. And as I've mentioned before in videos, when I moved about 8.5 months ago, there must be a box of gemstones that is somewhere in the ether because I cannot find a bunch of my gemstones. Like, and I'm not talking about super expensive ones. They were just ones that I kind of trinkety stones that I love to have. So I don't have a sapphire to show you. Sapphire comes mostly in blue or yellow, this is so interesting. I can't really figure out why Virgo stone is sapphire because really technically in the Upaye system, which is like true medical astrology anyway, Saturn is really this, most strongly associated with blue sapphire. Okay. Blue sapphires are gorgeous. And one day I will get my hands on a real true blue sapphire, but if you think of that Saturnian influence, we talked about Saturn is kind of this cold and rigid energy, but blue sapphire can be really good for helping people take care of their responsibilities. And then a yellow sapphire is technically Jupiter's stone, which Jupiter is the great benefic who brings luck and abundance and wisdom and philosophy. That's the ultimate stone that I want. I want a true, like raw, but really nice yellow sapphire. As a Sagittarius rising, Jupiter's the Lord of my chart. And so one of these days, I'm going to get myself a yellow sapphire. But sapphire is really dedicated to the sign of Virgo. Again, I don't really know why. That's just what the books say. Okay, but there's plenty of other stones that resonate well with the sign of Virgo. This right here, I'm going to start with, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. It's either Amazonite or Amazonite. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a beautiful stone and it is said to be really good for the nervous system and like helping to kind of just calm the overall nervous system, especially if there's emotions involved. Okay, Amazonite is a beautiful color stone. Another one is, should I go with this one first? Yeah, let's start with tree agate. This right here is something called tree agate, which I love agate. I don't know how many times I talk about this. I love all forms of agate, but the green agates really, when we think about green, green is the heart chakra. It's such a lovely energy. This can be calming, but in a strange way, also kind of stimulating. The green agates can. Okay, now the other one I'm going to bring up is something called snowflake obsidian. This is all these stones. Okay, where I'm getting these stones from, the Encyclopedia of Crystals by Judy Hall. Really goes into depth about what stones kind of resonate well with each zodiac sign and each planet, and goes into, well, other books then help me realize the connection between these stones and these zodiac signs. Regardless, all these stones very specifically resonate well with the sign of Virgo. Snowflake obsidian is a very calming stone. It's what I like about it is that it's protective, but it's also a little bit like obsidian is a very protective mineral. Okay, super protective, but the snowflake obsidian kind of lightens it up a little bit, makes it a little sweeter, but it is a very protective stone. Okay, so there's that. I think I will leave that there. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please do visit erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.